Another episode of Resistance Reads. I'm Michael Kilman.
I'm Matt Wellstrom.
And we read the reimagining of Huckleberry Finn, James, this time. It was a 2024 very award-winning
Tour de force.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, it won like every major literary award
if you walked past a bookshop in 2024, you saw that big cover poster of it, and then like the national. We won like a very notable prize.
Yeah, Pulitzer Prize.
Well, you won that in 2025.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but the National Book Award.
National Book Award.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And man, it was just like it was everywhere. Everybody was talking about it, and as a big fan of Mark Twain and Huckleberry Finn in particular, I was like, I don't know about this book, and I'm so glad I read it because I'm gonna have to get on Percival Everett, like on his whole bibliography, because it was so good.
So let's introduce him.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like to? Because I don't know anything about this book.
I read a little bit about
UCLA.
it. Yeah. So he is a very distinguished professor. He has written quite a few books. Mm-hmm. So this is not like a writer who comes out of nowhere and is this is a person who has been in the institution of literature for a long time. You know what? Let's pull up his
seemingly like 20 years or something.
Right. Yeah, I read the Wikipedia, but I didn't take notes.
Well, I was supposed to be doing that, and then I got a new job that kicked my ass for a solid week. So, we're flying a little bit by the seat of our pants today, guys. But
all right, okay. So he was born in 1956. Distinguished professor of English at the University of California. He describes himself as pathologically ironic. I love it. But yeah, he's done all kinds of books: satires, Western fiction, thrillers, mystery, and then of course James.
Yes.
He is he's a professor of UCLA. Some of his other famous books are Erasure. I Am Not Sidney Poitier.
Sidney Poitier is who I was referencing when I said "Call Me James."
Yeah.
We got on.
Yeah,
it's got that. Never mind.
The Trees, and he was The Trees was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. So he's been kind of like a notary literary figure for some time.
Well, and he'd been nominated for a Pulitzer a couple times previous to this. I think one was for a book called Dr. No, which I thought was very funny because Dr. No was also a famous
James Bond.
Ian Fleming book.
Yeah.
And I don't think he and Ian Fleming would have a lot in common.
No. What did Ian Fleming say about Idris Elba as a possible James Bond? Did you hear what he said about that?
Ian Fleming? Is he still alive?
He was.
What?
Yeah. He said something like...
would it have sounded like something that a white person would say in this book that we just read?
Yeah.
Wow.
He said that Idris Elba was too, quote, street to play...
Too street!
to play James Bond.
Wow.
Which is like, Idris Elba is like... I mean, he is like one of the most brilliant actors alive.
That's insane.
Yeah, some dog whistle shit there.
No. Ian Fleming died in 1964. Bro.
Oh, I must be thinking of like maybe it was one of the directors or producers of James Bond.
It was probably Broccoli. It was probably one of the Broccoli people. The family that owns the rights to James Bond is named Broccoli.
Yeah.
No, yeah, Ian Fleming fought in World War II.
Okay. Forgive me then.
No, I was just like, I was shook for a second there.
I was like,
my whole world was
I can't remember, but someone said that about Idris Elba because he was under serious consideration for Bond. But we digress here.
Yeah.
As we often do.
Yeah, we tend to, yeah.
But yeah, James. This book blew me away for sure.
Yeah.
I had, as I had mentioned at the end last time, had not read Huck Finn since middle school. So it had been about 3 decades.
Wow, yeah.
So I was like, I better reread it because all
Yeah.
I remember was the Disney Channel adaptation that I watched 100 times.
With Devon Sawa and the kid from Home Improvement, right?
Was it the kid from Home Improvement? There was two. There was a Tom Sawyer
Oh,
and there was a Huck
I
Finn,
might be
and they
conflating those
had
two.
different actors.
Yes.
I thought Elijah Wood was in Huck Finn.
Okay, that's probably
I
right.
thought it
That's
was.
probably right.
Maybe
Yeah.
I'm crazy.
No, I think Simba was in the Tom Sawyer one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Simba.
Yeah.
That's right. He was Simba.
JTT
JTT
came back
yeah.
to me. All
That's
right.
right. So that was all I remembered. So I reread Huck Finn.
What'd you think of Huck Finn?
You know, I really appreciated most of it. There was a
Great.
couple of things, and I think this is really for after we talk about the summary and we get into analysis, that I was actually very glad that Percival Everett very heavily just removed.
Sure.
There was just a couple of things. I mean, we'll talk
Yeah.
about that. We already talked about it, like
Mhm.
you know, when we were just hanging out before.
Yeah.
But I thought that as a novel, keeping in mind that this is a coming of age story for either young adults or middle grade.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it'd probably be more young adults because middle grade, there's some concepts they play with that
Huck Finn.
Huck and that
I mean,
Twain plays with.
Yeah. And it's also like it's written in an era like before the concept of like young adult or middle grade fiction is even really a thing.
Yeah, yeah. But it definitely is speaking to. It's a coming of age story for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
so
true.
keeping that in mind, and I still appreciated how much nuance Twain was able to fit in a lot of the narratives, and still manage to make you really. I think the thing that was really interesting was watching Huck go from this idea of like, well, the law is right, the law is good, I'm a bad person for breaking the law, and like basically running away with Jim, to well, fuck that. I'm going to be a bad person.
Yeah.
If that's what it means being a bad person, then I am going to be the bad person.
Absolutely.
And like accepting that like maybe there are things about the law and things in the world that are like considered like legal and right by the status quo, but actually are really
slavery.
horrible. A la slavery. And I really appreciated, like, I was just thinking about like the time that Twain is writing in the 1880s, and like this must have been a really radical text in a lot of ways for that era, especially the 1880s. We're talking about the rise of Jim Crow, and so his commentary about slavery would have been really important, especially in that period in the South, where you're having this terrible rise of fascism and violence against black people. You know, lynchings, and I mean, I don't know what else you call it, but terrorism. White terrorism,
domestic terrorism. Yeah,
absolutely. So, and so I thought like he is probably trying to create a conversation around the humanity of Black Americans in a time when that humanity was once again being stripped with a new series of laws and policies that had gone into place. Because if you guys don't know this, right after the Civil War, we actually had like black people in Congress.
We had more black people in Congress in the 1870s than we had until any point, maybe until like the last 10 years.
Right.
You know, like it was wild.
Right, so there was major political changes after the Civil War, and then the Jim Crow laws go into effect in the late 1870s. They trickle in. They don't all come at once, but they gradually create all kinds of like
70 years.
Right. What is the modern equivalent of like voter ID laws?
Right. They had voter ID laws back then as well.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which was largely holding a gun and standing at polling places, and which is why, by the way, like, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, you have this whole discussion of using ICE to sit at polling places. That is very reminiscent of the rise of the Jim Crow era
Yeah,
in the
that's some Jim
South.
Crow bullshit.
It is some Jim Crow bullshit.
Yeah.
And like another really interesting thing that a lot of people don't realize is, yeah, the terror was mostly on black and brown people
Yeah.
in that age, but they also lynched sympathetic white people.
Yes, absolutely. And not just, I mean, black, brown, Asian people too.
Mhm,
You know,
mhm.
like there was a very famous riot in Colorado, which is why Denver doesn't have a Chinatown, because in this era, it was like it was the 1890s. It was like just after Huck Finn was written. And during the Sand Creek Massacre, or right, I should say right after the Sand Creek Massacre, one of the army officers who didn't participate in it, he was like in that battalion, didn't participate in it because it was so horrifying. He refused to do it, testified before the state senate, and then was shot dead in the street.
Yeah. So he was an active person. He saw what was happening, and we don't hear enough about these kind of people in history who stood and said, "I will not participate in this terrible thing," and then he was killed for it. He lost his life too.
He lost his life, but he did an amazing thing because he got it on the record.
Yeah,
and that's why we still know about what happened today.
Yep, that's exactly why.
Anyway,
but really, like, Huck Finn, I think, was definitely an important book. I still think it's kind of an important book. I think it's still worth reading. You know, and I know there's a lot of people who get tripped up over the racial slurs, but like, here's the thing: if you're going to have an honest conversation about that period in history, you cannot ignore how fucking terrible slavery was.
It's so important.
How demeaning it was.
Yes.
And, you know, there's racial slurs a number of times in James, and I think he uses them more strategically.
Yeah.
And I think...
I don't know if I agree with that, actually. I was going to agree, and then I think that Huck is interacting with more white people in the adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
That's true.
And they were the ones who were using the N-word constantly.
Yeah, that's true. That's
and
true.
I think you're right. I mean, I think it is strategically, the usage, the amount of the usage is different in James versus Huck, but I don't think it's a political statement. I think it's literally just a reflection of the type of speech that either would be exposed to.
Yeah, that's true, because Huck does. I mean, you know, in Huck Finn, you lose track of James for probably about a third of the book.
Yeah,
it's a large
a third to a half,
like, because he calls him Jim.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a third to a half of the book. You only have Huck's point of view. He's not going down the river, and this is largely because a lot of the time when Huck is in town, he cannot like let people see that he's there with a runaway slave.
Yeah,
like so. It makes sense for the plot of the story, but I think you're right, because most of James surrounds like him encountering, probably a third to a half of the book is about his encounters with other slaves or runaways.
Yes.
And you don't really get that perspective at all in Huck Finn, which is why I kind of think that like reading these two together is
beautiful.
Really beautiful and beneficial.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, and neither of them are long books.
No.
Like, in fact, they're both short enough that I think there's been several books we've read for Resistance Reads that are longer than both of them combined.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely The Ministry for the Future is.
And also, definitely Babel.
Oh, yeah.
Babel was like 600 pages.
Babel was God, what a good book.
What a good book, though, yeah.
Yeah, no. So anyway, but the story of Huck Finn and of James starts in Hannibal, Missouri in 1835, question mark? It's my only quibble with James, actually.
Both of us are only we had one gripe with James.
Yeah.
A brilliant book, but we both have the same gripe. We'll get to later.
And so from James' perspective, like, we're introduced to him. He's a slave owned by Ms. Watson and her sister, they're both elderly, like widow ladies, and I guess one's a spinster and one's a widow, and they own him, and they have adopted Huck Finn after his adventures in the Adventures of Tom Sawyer. He came into a bunch of money, and because of like pirates or something like that.
I forget exactly how it goes, but if I recall, him and Tom Sawyer, they weren't pirates, they were like thieves who had tried to kill both him and Tom
and Becky
and they tricked them in the whole cave system. And I remember this very vividly because like I actually visited the caves where they did the filming for the Disney Channel show in Missouri. So so that they trick them in this whole cave system, and they get away, and the adults let them keep the money.
That's so weird. That's so weird.
It is very interesting. But like in the beginning of Huck Finn and in the beginning of James, kind of the pivotal event for Huck Finn is the return of his drunken, abusive father.
Yes, exactly. He's a piece of work or shit, however you want to think of it. And he like, so in Huck Finn, you experience Huck's, has to go live with him, and it's like this little shack, and it sucks. And his dad beats him whenever he gets drunk, and kind of when he's sober too.
He's really one of those just abusive assholes. You're like, you looked at me wrong, now you get a beating.
Exactly. He locks Huck in, and then Huck has to escape. And
he literally imprisons Huck.
Yeah, he does. That's what I'm saying. He locks him in the thing, and he wants to take his money. He's like after his money. So Huck escapes and like goes to this island, Kingston Island, something. What's the name of the island? Doesn't matter. There's like this little island in the Mississippi River, which is a massive fucking river, so it can have islands in it. And Jackson Island. Yes.
Okay. I can't remember the name at all. So.
And Jim is there too, because Jim has found out that for some reason Miss Watson wants to sell him into like to someone in New Orleans, and he'll be separated from his family. But like, when we see him with his family, this is the best, like one of the best things in the book. He speaks with like a standardized dialect. He's not doing the vernacular that Twain has him speak throughout the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And the reason that they do this is it's code switching. It's a defense mechanism to make white folk think that slaves are ignorant and like childish and superstitious and stuff like that. So there's an incident at the beginning of Huck Finn and James where Huck and Tom like play a little trick on Jim. He's like hung his hat on a little hook while he's taking a nap on the porch, and they like move it, and then they tell him that witches did it, and he's like, whoa, he's playing along. In both books you can tell he's just humoring them, but the reason he gives for that in James is that he just wants to see them like, he just wants them to be entertained, because especially Huck has a bad lot, Tom's aunt is nice to him, but like Huck's dad he sucks. So anyway, they're on the island, and Jim is escaping to go north so he can get money to buy his family out of slavery. And Huck is like, okay, let's do that. And so they spend a little time on the island, kind of like constructing a raft so that they can move down the river. And Jim gets bit by a rattlesnake, and like has a kind of, he like goes into a fugue state, and he like has an argument with John Locke, because apparently
that was Voltaire the first time.
No, I
Locke
know
comes later. Locke comes later.
All right,
it's
fine.
Voltaire.
All right. And it turns out he's been sneaking into Judge Thatcher's like library and reading his books. So he's like an autodidact, which is like so fucking cool. And
James is a genius.
He's a genius. If you can teach yourself how to read well enough to like do Candide or something like that, then you're great. You're so smart.
And like Huck Finn. So Huck Finn is written from, like, Huck writes the book later in life.
Yes.
And just like that, James is also writing later in life.
Yes. And that's a big part of the book too, because at one point in their adventures, there's like a flood and a river. They like see this riverboat crashed on the banks of the Mississippi, and they like investigate it because it might have like cool stuff in it, food, supplies for their adventure. And Jim finds this like cache of books in a trunk. And Huck's like, "What do you want those for?" He's like, "I want to read them." And he's like, "You can read? What?" And no, he says he's going to teach himself how to read.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because he doesn't admit it till...
Because he doesn't admit it.
Later,
Yeah.
Way later. He
yeah.
It.
But Huck has been like noticing Jim slip out of his patois and into just like standard dialect, which he speaks better than any white person in the book, by the way.
He's extremely articulate.
Yeah.
And like thoughtful and critical and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But they have to flee that island, and for the same reason both Huck Finn and James is that like Huck kind of inadvertently tips off that like who he is to this woman he meets in town, and she sends like basically like her husband and brother or something like that to go and track down, because there's now a bounty out.
Yeah.
We forgot to mention Huck has to fake his death to escape from his father. That's how he ends up on the island.
That's right.
So now poor James is like...
He's like, people think he murdered Huck Finn.
They think he murdered Huck Finn. Yeah. So everyone's out to like try to, so there's a bounty on his head. So they have to, in like the dead of night, like flee this island and end up getting like taken by the current south.
Yes.
On the Mississippi.
Yes.
If you guys have never seen the Mississippi firsthand, it is like big enough that sometimes it's difficult to see the other side.
Yeah, I think there are even parts where you can't with the human eye. It's crazy.
It's I mean, it looks big enough to be almost like an ocean. So
yeah,
you have these big historically you have these big steamer ships coming up and down that are like the size of, not quite the size, but pretty damn close to modern cruise ships in some cases.
They were the equivalent back in the day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So they're like riding along down the river, and of course they get into a series of misadventures.
Yeah.
The first one is kind of like when they they get off the boat to kind of stop because they think they've like missed. They're trying to figure out how to get to a free state, and they think they kind of got swept up in the fog. They get kind of lost in the fog, and they end up in this place that's like this terrible feud between these two families.
It's so funny. That's one of my favorite bits in the first book. It's just like Mark Twain lampooning like Southern pride and like family dynamics, and it is so fucking it's very funny and ends tragically because it's satire, and that's kind of the point. But
and Huck sees like people murder each other in real time for the first time in his life.
Yeah, like 4 people, like several that he was like friends with and stuff like that, and they like fed and like housed him for he was there for weeks, I think.
Yeah, it's a couple weeks.
And it's so funny because all of the Jim's like stories in like throughout the book, they're like mirror images of Huck's. So like Jim, like while Huck is like kind of living large and getting like nice clothes and well fed and there's pretty girls around and stuff like that, Jim is like kind of camped out in this little like alcove, like this little cutout along the river where he's hidden from view, but he has light, and there's like slaves around that are nice to him and like give him food, and oftentimes he's fishing and catching more food than they're getting, and so he's like giving it to them, and he's like able to read all these books that he's just acquired. So he's gonna like, he read like a stack of books, and at one point he's like, I was reading these and I was like, this isn't doing it. These aren't like, these white folks don't know. They don't know shit. It's like it's a perfect moment for him because he gets to like read in peace. He doesn't have to sneak into a slaveholder's library in the middle of the night, like constantly afraid of getting caught, hiding in a corner reading.
Yeah.
He's just like in this beautiful scenic spot, like relaxing for the first moment in his entire life.
Yeah, and that's when he decides to write.
And so he asks for a pencil, and one of these guys that's been nice to him, like goes and gets him like the stub of a pencil but his master finds out and first beats the shit out of
They
him.
whip him, yeah.
And then they lynch him.
Yeah, it's real. Yeah, that was.
But
that was
the tragic end of that story, like the people that were nice to Jim suffering like this terrible fate, is very similar to Huck's. And I think Percival Everett does that throughout the book, and it's just so well constructed.
Yeah, and there's lots of like there's like Huck experiences violence, and so does Jim.
Yeah,
and so you're seeing this kind of the parallels are really great.
And when Huck is like basically captured by these fucking brigands, these like just like con men, these like inveterate the carpetbaggers.
Yeah,
you don't like. I think they're so funny, but they're terrible.
Yeah,
but they're funny.
They're horrible.
Jim falls in with this other troop of also like crooked, like, I don't know. They're not like, they're entertainers in a different way.
Yeah.
But they're also very disingenuous, which is very interesting.
Yeah. So after they escape the whole feud area, this is when
the feuding families.
Then they run into the carpetbaggers. The one guy claims he's the king of France.
Yes,
and the other guy,
king of France.
The long lost king of France. The other guy's a duke.
Yeah,
and that's the guy says he's a duke first, and then the other guy says, "Well, I'm actually a king." Like,
that's so funny that you say that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
so
he's the duke of they. Anyway, yeah, he's a duke from England, and this other guy's the king of France.
Essex, something like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so they get into that, and the con men like they like put themselves in danger constantly in Huck Finn.
Mm-hmm.
You only actually get in James the first time that they almost get into trouble. Because in James, it takes a much darker and different turn after. And this is where Everett kind of takes ethereal license and really decides, like, let's reimagine this. So he takes... the carpetbaggers try to con this revival tent, and it goes poorly, and they all have to flee and escape. And they all do. They all flee and escape. But, like... Huck and Jim like try to get away from the carpetbaggers because they realize pretty quick that they're bad news, and they cast off. And then they go to sleep on the raft, and they wake up the next morning, and the carpetbaggers are waiting for them. Basically,
they found them.
So they found them, and then they decide that their next great con is going to be to sell the runaway, then help him escape, and then do it over and over again for money. This is the big divergence from Huck Finn.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is the first person they sell him to is, well, he doesn't really sell him, but they go to a blacksmith.
Yes.
And this blacksmith, Wiley is his name. He kind of like sort of steals Jim.
Well, so they like what it is they injure his slave.
Yep.
Because the slave like said something that they don't like, so they whip him. But he's like an older guy, so he's like, and he's the real blacksmith.
Right.
You know, he's the one who does all the work. And so the blacksmith comes up, or the head blacksmith, the massa blacksmith, comes up and he's like, "What are you doing? Like, you injured my slave. Give me your slave as recompense." And they're like, "Well, we'll loan him to you." And that's basically like they go and like the carpetbaggers leave for a second, and Jim is like doing some work, and the head blacksmith is like, "Sing while you work." He's like, "Okay, I guess so." And so he starts singing a song, and then this minstrel troupe rocks up, and they're like, "That's the best tenor we've ever heard. Mm-hmm. Can we buy your tenor from you?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah."
And Huck, by the way, at this point he wants to stay with Jim,
mm-hmm.
but Wiley, the blacksmith slave owner, forces him to go with the carpetbaggers, and you never actually see the carpetbaggers again in this version.
Mm-hmm.
In the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, they end up getting tarred and feathered and die.
Yeah.
Because they just pull one too many scams.
And tarring and feathering is like, horrible. I mean, those guys deserved something, but no one deserves that.
No, that's one of the worst ways it's one of the worst forms of it's hot tar and oil poured into your skin. It sears all the skin, all all of the flesh off of you so that there's no skin left, and then you basically die of third-degree burns all over your body.
Yeah.
And then they put feathers on you for insulting effect.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, exactly, because you're, a chicken or whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, so you never see the carpetbaggers again. So he gets hired by this minstrel troupe, and it turns out they are a blackface minstrel troupe.
As all minstrel troops were back then.
Well, and when I think of minstrels, I often think of Monty Python.
That's casting a little farther back.
European minstrels. That's what I tend to think of.
Back. Yeah,
but yes,
but the
minstrel show in America was blackface, and so Jim is like forced to participate in this thing. And there's kind of a close call because these white people kind of recognize that like his makeup is a little too good.
The thing is, and you're forgetting the thing to convincingly portray an actor in a minstrel show, they have to whiten his face and then darken it again. Mm-hmm. It's very funny. At one point, he's like, "This is the most surreal experience I've ever had in my life."
He's pretending to be a white man to pretend to be a black man. It was such an interesting commentary.
Yeah. Of course, people want to touch his hair. They think his wig is very good. A girl straight up just is trying to climb into his lap at one point. Yeah. He's like having a panic attack about it. And then her dad rocks up and is like,
"That's the problem.
I want to touch your hair."
Yeah. Yeah, so then...
And then he sneaks into his tent at night to try and touch his hair again. And the head minstrel has to be like, "Why were you touching my employee while he was asleep?"
Yeah, yeah. And then Jim decides...
Like, "Are you gay?" is what he was implying.
Yeah. And Jim decides, like, okay, this is too dangerous. And then they get to this next town, and like the head minstrel, what was that guy's name? The head of the troupe, who buys Jim for $200. I wanted to say
Percival Everett, and I was like, no, that's the author's name. But it was something
Arthur or
I forget now.
Anyway, so this guy is like, it's really key here is he's pretending, he's like, "I don't really think slavery is a good thing." He's like, "I'm going to treat you really well." And like James,
I paid $200 for you, and I feel like your rate is about $1 a day. So all you owe me is 200 performances.
Right.
Not even days of service.
It's performances, which is going to be like how many years?
He's just doing indentured servitude, which is like the first, like dipping your toe into slavery.
And like, let's be honest, when that 200th performance comes up, that guy ain't let him.
Oh yeah, because he's like, "Oh yeah, you were late one day, so you owe me a day for that."
Yeah.
And then you did get the cold, and so you didn't perform on that day. Also, for their next show, he's sitting him down. Mm-hmm. He's like, "Yeah, you can't do this one because this town is..."
Well, they were afraid that it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
So he says that, and so Jim, takes off. When he's like left alone, he pieces out,
steals the guy's book where he was writing his racist songs.
Oh, and they're so racist. Like, he repeats some of them.
So bad.
And then Norman is another person of the troupe, and he's super important. So Norman is black but presenting white, and so everyone thinks he's white, but I can't remember if his mother or father was black. So Norman's kind of hanging out in the troupe, and he plays the drums. And so James has a couple conversations with him, and then James escapes, and then Norman comes after him, and they kind of like form a little kind of like...
Yeah, it's like, "He sent me to find you, but I'm just going with you."
Yeah. So they run off together, and so now it's like, So Norman also has a wife he wants to buy back. So James is like, "Maybe we should take a page out of the Carpetbaggers book. You sell me for $1,000, and then you'll help me escape, and then we'll have enough money to buy both our wives, and James has a wife and a daughter.
Yeah.
We'll have enough money to buy them back." And, of course, this goes horribly wrong.
Well, it turns out the Carpetbaggers are fucking stupid. This is a bad plan. Or maybe it's a good plan if you're the white folks who are doing it, but it's a bad plan for Jim. Because, like, they sell Jim to
Henderson.
To Henderson, the woodcutter. And the woodcutter's camp is fucking rough. And after, like, on your first 2 or 3 days of service there, he flogs the shit out of you just so you know your place.
Mm-hmm.
But Jim experiences that and he's just like, you know, like, if it weren't for adrenaline, he would just be falling over.
Right.
And in this camp, there's this girl,
Sammy,
mm-hmm. who, of course, Henderson is raping every day. Mm-hmm. And she's like 15. And so James is like, hey, do you want to come with me? And she's like, I guess so, yeah. I guess I do. And while they're escaping, she gets shot.
Yeah, and there's also a slave there. What was Leonard or Leo or something?
Yeah, Leo was definitely, like, bought in.
He was bought into the whole slavery thing, and Jim is, like, totally shocked. He's, like, never met a slave who is, like, happy with his circumstances. Or not happy, but, like...
content, I guess?
Submitted, essentially.
That's it.
So he's, like, submitted to the circumstances and has no desire to escape. And there's a couple of times when he's, like Jim is really worried he's going to cause problems.
I think it's really interesting because I feel like he's exemplifying the whole, like, house slave trope, mm-hmm. but not in the traditional plantation sense that we're used to seeing it in.
Right.
He's not, like, living in a comfortable house.
Right.
And, like, not doing hard labor. He still has to do hard labor, mm-hmm. and, like, live in a fucking tent in the woods.
And he's still bought it.
But he's still bought it.
Yeah. So anyway, that's, like, his first experience to like realize, oh, maybe I shouldn't trust every other slave I encounter.
Absolutely.
Because I don't know who's going to cause trouble for me as a runaway. But yeah, he escapes with Sammy, and they find Norman on the path, because there was a whole plan where he would meet up with Norman. And so him and Norman and Sammy are trying to escape, and they try to build this raft, but then the dogs and Henderson catches up, and they're, like, fleeing on the raft, and they jump on, and it starts to fall apart, and they're each drifting on different logs, and they start opening fire. Yeah, it's a super intense sequence. Yeah. Opening fire, and they think they get away, but then, like, when they get down the river further, they notice Sammy's not moving, mm-hmm. and then she's got a big bullet hole in her. Yeah. So she's dead. And then, so then, like, a couple of days later, they manage to steal a boat, and the boat is nearly capsized by a big steamship coming down.
And then there's another exciting sequence on the river, because they have to hop from the boat onto, like, this little, like, half floor, like in Being John Malkovich, you know, like, floor, like, 13 and a half or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's, like, right next to the paddle wheel. And paddle wheels look, like, nice and pretty when you're, like, on the shore and you see the boat go by. But if you're up close to them, they are, like, fucking terrifying.
Well, they're a giant gear.
A giant gear.
Yeah, so imagine
that could chop you up.
Yeah, imagine if you're leaping into a giant clock. It's not it's not something you want to do.
You're Batman or some shit.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And so, but they get up in there, and on that, like, little floor, that's, like, where the coal is, like, thrown into the furnace that powers the steamship, and Norman has to pretend to be Jim's master again. But he and Jim just have this, like dialogue, and so the slave that's in the engine room is like, what the fuck? Why are you talking to him like that?
Right.
And
he's super bought in.
Yeah, so he's even more bought in.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, because you're introduced to this idea of, like, a slave who has accepted their circumstances and is, like, willing to, like, narc on other slaves. But this guy is, like, he's, like, institutionalized.
Yeah.
He's always talking about Massa Casey, and, like, at a certain point, Jim's like, I don't think Master Casey exists.
And he doesn't.
I think he's a figment of dude's imagination.
Yeah.
There's just somebody that puts, like,
he slides him some
cornbread. Like, once a day through a hole.
And he has a hole in the ground to go to the bathroom. And he never leaves this boiler.
He never leaves the boiler. He's always shoveling coal into it.
Yeah.
And so Jim has to hang out there for a little while in this extremely surreal situation where this insane man is just, like, asking him why he talks right, and why he's talking to white folk like that.
And then I was unclear on, so the boat explodes.
Yes.
It does explode, but I was unclear because there were starting to be hints that this has something to do with the Civil War, which threw me for a big
So
loop.
we find out what happens when Jim runs into Huck again, because Huck is also on this boat, and before it explodes, Huck is up on the top with the white folk, and people start fighting about the oncoming war.
That's right.
Because one guy called the Southerners slavers, and a Southern gentleman took offense to that. And so, but in the boiler room, there's 7 bells,
Mm-hmm.
and like, so what happens is I think the kerfuffle ended up like running into the bell pole.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 7
And
bells.
clogged
So exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
and the boiler guy is just like throwing too much coal into the furnace, because 4 is the most he's ever heard of.
Right.
And so he just overloads it. There's too much pressure.
And it
Can't get
explodes.
released because someone can't release the steam, the tension to do the whistle or whatever. And yeah, the whole thing explodes.
It explodes, and then there's this.
It's almost like it's a metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah. And oh man, we forgot something important. So, the blacksmith way back earlier, the blacksmith
Mhm.
slave,
Mhm.
very heavily insinuates that Huck is actually mixed race.
Yeah, he's like, oh, why are you?
He's like, I recognize a mixed race person.
Mhm.
He's like, he might be presenting white, but he's a mixed race. He's
yeah.
like, look at his hair. It's not quite white, and look at
Mhm.
some of his features, right?
Yeah.
So you have 2 in the wreckage of this explosion. You have Huck, who is mixed race, and you have Norman. Both are white presenting mixed race individuals.
Yep.
Neither of them, well, Huck can swim, but he's like struggling. He's like injured.
Yeah.
And then Norman can't swim at all.
Right.
So James has to make a choice.
Yeah.
And he ultimately chooses Huck.
Because
It turns out that he's his actual father.
yeah, because he was friends with his mom back in the day. They grew up together, and they were friends.
They were friends.
And that's all Jim ever says about that, but I like that.
Yeah. But it turns out that Jim is actually Huck's father,
Mhm.
not the abusive drunk asshole.
Yeah.
And that's why he chooses to save him. And the book kind of then begins to like really kind of take off from there. They spot some Union soldiers on the
Mhm.
road back to Hannibal.
Mhm.
Jim is like, I'm taking you back to Hannibal, Missouri.
Yeah.
You're going to be safe with the widow.
I'm gonna break my wife and daughter out.
I'm gonna break my wife
I'm not
and daughter
buying
out.
them. Turns out I can't buy them back. Norman told me that anyway, so
And the Civil War is like breaking out. There's a fight over this thing.
Mhm.
And so he's like, I'm going to break them out and we're going to flee to a free state.
or
And,
maybe Canada.
and then, of course, Huck is like, I want to go with you.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you present as white. You don't want to be a runaway. Like, just stay back here. You stay in Hannibal. They get there and they find out very quickly that that his wife and daughter were sold to a breeder plantation.
Brutal. And
Really brutal.
Yeah, so he actually tells Huck to find out where this plantation is. He's like, if you do want to help me, go in and find out where they were taken to.
Mm-hmm.
And like, while Jim is like, the first night they get back, Jim is so tired because of all the shit that they've been through that he like hides in the slave area and is forced to witness a slave master taking his privileges,
Yeah.
privilege of first night, except over and over and over and over and over
Right.
again.
So there's another incident of rape here,
Yeah.
and it's brutal, and he wants to jump out to this basically the what do they call it? Not a taskmaster,
I don't know, the whip bearer,
the slave, the overseer,
the overseer, yes.
Right. So he's watching the overseer rape this woman who Jim has known for many years,
Mhm,
Katie,
mhm.
and has been friends with her. And she's like screaming and crying, like, not again, not again. This is obviously something that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And Jim is sitting there and he just talks about how he can feel the rage building in him,
Mhm.
right? And so while Huck is he flees that, goes back to the island where they all kind of started out,
Yeah.
and in the middle of the Mississippi, and he's sitting there stewing about what he just witnessed while he's waiting for Huck to kind of get him the information he needs,
Yeah.
and um, uh, and the overseer ends up drunk on the island, and this is when Jim's like, "Fuck it,"
Yeah.
and
I can't get more killed or more enslaved than I already am. You know, and actually in the moment where he was witnessing the rape, it wasn't he was like, I've always been so angry, but now I feel like it's become focused.
right,
You know, it's like it's yeah, and I want to utilize it. So he does. He goes up, he sneaks up on
the
the
overseer.
overseer, takes his gun, which of course he has,
Mm-hmm.
like puts it in his belt like he sees white folk do all the time, and then like goes around to the other side of the fire, starts feeding the fire so it wakes the overseer up from the heat, but then he's also obscured, and the guy's like, "Who are you?" And he like leans and he's like, "Inward Jim." He's like, "That's not my name." And then he just like walks around because he's like got the gun on him, walks around and chokes dude out
Mm-hmm.
and like asks him some questions like, "How many rapes have you done? How many men have you lynched?" You know,
Yeah.
and you know doesn't think to get the information of where his family is because he's so enraged.
He's so furious.
Yeah, but he definitely just strangles him to death.
Yeah.
And then he goes back. Then Huck comes and finds him. Actually,
Huck comes and finds him. Unfortunately, Huck doesn't find the information he needs.
Yeah.
He knows that they were sold to a breeder plantation, but he doesn't know where.
Yes.
So then Jim is like, "All right, Huck," you know, and this is kind of the last. This is kind of their parting,
Mm-hmm.
and Jim decides it's time to go talk to Judge Thatcher.
Yes.
So he goes to talk to Judge Thatcher, and he like shows up in the middle of the night, he's got the gun on him, and like basically like, you know, under the threat of death is like, "Tell me what happened to my wife and daughter."
Yeah.
And he doesn't kill Judge Thatcher.
No, Judge Thatcher the whole time is like, "Why are you talking like that?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Judge Thatcher. He says Judge Thatcher is more terrified about Jim's like clear ability to be articulate and well read and thoughtful than he is of the gun that Jim's holding. Like,
Yeah.
it is so messing with the judge's mind that this man who he thought was basically a stupid animal, is actually a super intelligent human
He's smarter
being.
than he is.
He's smarter than Judge Thatcher.
Jim makes him point out where his family is on the map, like in relation to where they are, Hannibal, and then like makes him take him down the river, and Judge Thatcher is not strong, so it takes him a little while. But then he ties him to a tree and leaves him there.
And
So
and then goes to the plantation where there's the breeder facility, and he like meets a bunch of the other slaves, like the male slaves who are like also like breeders.
Yeah.
And he frees all of them, and they storm the proverbial castle.
They fucking do, man.
And just kill the slavers and then take their freedom, and he finds his wife and daughter, and they all escape to a free state. And that's,
well, the last we see them, they are escaping to a free state.
well, they cross the Mississippi, get over there, and they're like,
into
runaways?
Iowa?
It was Iowa, I think. And they're like, "You runaways?" And they're like, "Yep." And they're like, "All right."
Yep. Okay.
Because now the Civil War has started.
Yeah, one of them's like, "Are you Inward Jim?" And he's like, "Call me James."
Call me James. Yeah, it was a really cool. It was a badass moment.
Oh, dude, that last couple chapters is so good.
Oh, it was.
I mean, the book is so good.
It's so good.
But the last couple chapters is like, what if a black person had written Django Unchained? You know, it's so so sick.
That is totally what it is. Yeah. There is so much to talk about here. I think actually I want to kind of divert a little bit for a second.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and talk about a concept in anthropology we use.
Code switching.
Called structural violence, actually.
Oh, all right.
First,
all right.
Right?
Yeah.
So structural violence is what an anthropologist by the name of Paul Farmer coined. He didn't coin the term, but he coined that it was like the machinery, understanding the machinery of oppression.
Yes.
Right. So That's what structural violence is. It is the machinery of oppression, how a terrible system is created for the benefit of the powerful.
Yeah, and then reinforced.
And then reinforced time after time after time.
Yeah.
And
by all the participants in it.
By the participants, yeah.
That's the important thing, I think.
Which is a Foucauldian kind of piece of it, in that like
I would go that way, I guess.
Yep. Yeah. so it's like it's the idea that if you want people to continue on a terrible system, you have to convince them to police themselves, and then police other people in the system.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about like structural violence in terms of slavery, you would and like this kind of goes back to the creation of the concept of race in the first. Now, like, there's always been tribalism. There's, of course, always been stereotypes and bigotry for people who are not like you.
Yeah.
That's always been a thing as far as we know we were humans. But the concept of race is only a few hundred years old.
Right.
And that really begins during Bacon's Rebellion, is the aftermath of Bacon's Rebellion, which, if you don't know, was a moment when slaves, indentured servants, black freedmen, and, like, other poor whites, even who were free, rose up against the British elite in Jamestown in the 1660s and basically burned Jamestown to the ground, drove the elite out.
Yeah, basically took everything from the armory and just like went ham.
Right, and they successfully threw them out, so then, like, the mayor and a couple of other elites escape. They go up to Maryland and bring back a British army of several thousand and retake Jamestown.
Mm-hmm.
But now they have a problem, because now the poor of all different colors and backgrounds, and there were a number of free blacks who actually had voting rights because they held land, and some of them were traders and merchants.
Mm-hmm. So
like, it wasn't like inherently at that time, if you were black, you were a slave. After Bacon's Rebellion, that begins to change.
Yeah.
And by the 1670s and the 1680s, what you're getting is a whole bunch of new laws on the books. Anti-miscegenation laws, which, if you don't know what that means, it means that you can't mix based on the colors of your skin, are some of the first ones to go in. But the real one...
That shit lasts until the 1950s.
They're still technically on the books in several states today.
What the fuck?
Yeah, they're still technically not allowed. I mean, they just never removed them.
All right, well, wait for Loving to get overturned, guys.
So, yeah. Anyway.
It's a Supreme Court case, sorry.
Yeah.
I realize that the name actually
Yeah. Anyway, so in 1681, you get a series of laws, and the first one is a black person cannot testify against a white person in court. And that's like the first time you start removing the legal rights of people with darker skin. Any infraction essentially makes them into a permanent slave, so that by basically the end of the century, by the time 1700 rolls around, there are no free blacks left in the Americas. Yeah. They are all now slaves. And so, in order to make this system of structural violence worse, they incentivize poor whites to participate in this system by promising them extra privileges and rights, by dangling the whole bootstraps myth in front of them and saying, like, look, don't worry about it. You're poor and white now, but one day you too will have land and power and money, so side with us. Yeah. And so they create all these reinforced structures for poor whites to buy into this system. And because it's like, and if you have to understand too, like, even like Michelle Alexander, the scholar who wrote The New Jim Crow.
Who she's talking at CU Boulder next week.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I just found out today.
Maybe I'll have to go sneak up to CU Boulder next week. So Michelle Alexander is even like, the conditions of poor whites were barely better than the slaves. Like, they're awful. And so the way that they get them really to buy in is to say, yeah, your conditions suck, but at least you're not dark-skinned. Mm-hmm. And so you create this whole system. And then, in addition to that, in the 18th century, you get a whole series of like people like Carlinus Linnaeus who reinforce the concept of race through new scientific techniques by classifying the races.
Oh, God.
You get the rise. Yeah, Linnaeus is really important for like the history of biology, but he's also a real bastard.
Oh yeah,
So
one of the worst to ever do it.
yeah, so him and a whole bunch of other scholars start to create these ideas. Then you start to get eugenics popping up, and like there was always a concept of the purity of the blood, but then it gets kind of enshrined in terms of like by the 19th century, it starts being about mental illness. Like there's a physical type for mental illness or criminality. If you're a black person, you're literally genetically inferior now. There's all these kinds of pseudoscience justifications. So that gets us up to this period of like the 1830s. That's all of the kind of things that are really going on here is you have this really deeply entrenched system of structural violence that structural violence erases and controls history. So people they didn't know about the black freedmen or all of these, free blacks who had voting power, land rights, or any of that.
Yeah, and if you think like laws getting overturned and changed to make society more conservative and punitive is a new thing, it's definitely fucking not.
No. Right. So you erase and control history, and then you create all kinds of hidden avenues of control that are covert, right? Mm-hmm. And like, even though he didn't realize it, George Orwell is essentially talking about systems of structural violence in 1984 and how you get to this sort of thing. So,
absolutely.
And if you haven't seen it, watch our first episode on 1984.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I also want to say, there's a couple of viewers here watching right now. If you have questions or thoughts on James or Huck Finn or any of this stuff, or you want clarification, please chime in. We love to field questions and comments.
Absolutely, and we actually have one coming up, or maybe now's the right time to talk about it, because the major thing that Percival Everett changes in the story of Huck Finn is transposing it from the mid-1830s to the Civil War.
1861 is actually when the story takes place. And both of us hated that.
Yeah, it was so funny. The whole time I was reading James, I was like, he so seamlessly like interweaves this like Jim's adventure and like extrapolates what might have happened, in the story. And then, 2/3 of the way through the book, it turns out there's a civil war that's about to happen. I'm like, do I not remember when the adventures of Huck Finn take place? Because like, obviously what Mark Twain was doing was commenting on like how, like after the Civil War in the 1880s, what things were like before that and how bad it was, because he could see that society was doing the thing that society does sometimes, which was getting more conservative and being reactionary towards progress. And he wanted to tell them, to illustrate to them, it was not better when you were younger. It was actually worse. Don't try to go back to that. So Percival Everett transposing that and moving it up, it just kind of threw me out of the book for a second.
Yeah.
And it sounded like I wasn't able to get back into it. It was like one like tromboner like fucking up in an orchestra, like a weird note that
it's my only big
dogged
critique
me out of it.
And it doesn't, if he had in the beginning of the book seeded the idea that we were actually right on the cusp of the Civil War,
yes,
then it wouldn't have jarred me so much,
because we would have just gotten accustomed to it right away. We're just like, oh, there's a little difference, because there are also other differences.
There's
in
major
the story.
Differences.
Yeah,
I mean, he takes lots of authorial license with this in ways that really are in an excellent conversation with Huck Finn.
Yes, absolutely.
The changes he makes make Huck Finn better.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. I think every other change he makes is like a plus to the story.
Yeah. But then, damn, him just throwing, oh yeah, by the way, it's 1861. And here come some Union troops marching down.
Right.
Like, what the hell?
Are you sure?
Are you sure? Wait, did I thought I was crazy for a moment.
Same.
So I got onto Wikipedia and I was like, what year was Huck Finn written? And it was like,
or what year was it
taking
set?
place?
Yeah.
Because it's written in the 1880s, but it's like set in the 1830s.
Yeah.
And I was just like, no, wait, is it really? So then I had to be like, is it really 1861? And like,
and
yes,
you still want to have that experience while you're reading a really engaging book where you're just like worrying about something that's not actually that important. Like, does it? Because The other, I guess my other problem with it, or like the second half of my one problem with it, because every coin has two sides, and every problem's a coin, is that it doesn't serve any narrative function as far as I'm aware. But I'm not a black person in America. So I'm not, maybe there's something I'm missing as far as like the symbolism of the Civil War
Yeah.
and like the false liberation of enslaved peoples, when like a lot of what like the Union was fighting for was like economic dominance over the South or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I had like such a similar feeling. I was like, I don't understand what this does for the narrative, which is why we're asking all of you watching
Yeah.
either in real time or maybe watching or listening on the podcast later. If you're listening on one of the other podcast services,
Percival Everett, if you're watching,
yeah,
what were you going for?
what were
man?
you going for? Was there a real reason for you to suddenly set it in 1861 that made sense? Because like we discussed before we got on and we
Yeah.
couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're
I
like,
guess there's like, I feel like narratively it could be like that's why the boat explodes, but then also like we already had that bit with the feud, like we didn't really get to explore the feuding families in James the way we got to in Huck Finn. I feel like you could have, that could have been touched on there.
it could have been
you know?
anything. It could have been the accidental explosion. It could have been all kinds of things.
Yeah, it could have been the consequences of like employing one dude to power a steamship up and down the the Mississippi River, on a loop forever, and that would eventually break down.
Yeah. But if you add into the comments here on YouTube, no matter what service you're listening in, like the replay or live or whatever,
Yeah.
if you actually have an insight as to why he made this choice, because I am baffled.
I'm
by
baffled
it.
too. Yeah.
So it would be really interesting to get a perspective from someone who
Yeah.
maybe knew.
I guess nothing can be perfect. Otherwise, this would have been a perfect book.
That's the only
maybe that's a
flaw.
problem.
Yeah, maybe we're being too picky. I don't know, but
I don't think so, because we both independently.
independently,
We didn't discuss this while we were reading this. We had this conversation tonight. Like
why did
Why?
they do that? Why? So, yeah. So let's get back into talking about code switching.
code switching.
Because code switching is I love this.
It's such a fun reveal in like the first 10 pages of the book when it happens, and you're just like, wait, what?
Yeah, because
And then you're like, oh, that's perfect. Oh my God.
well, it's not only perfect; it makes total sense.
Absolutely.
I mean, so you see this with oppressed populations all over the place, where
Ooh.
they behave very differently.
Polgari? Is that what it's called? The lingo that gay men in the 50s in England spoke to hide their, like, it sounds, if you're a cop, it sounds like rhyming slang.
Oh yeah, I don't remember if it's what it's called, but I have
Yes.
read about that.
Yes.
Yeah. So like to essentially hide yourself from oppression, you change language and speech patterns.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
There's an anthropologist by the name of James C. Scott, who wrote a book called Weapons of the Weak,
Yeah.
and in that book, he talks about something called hidden transcripts. And these are the conversations and behaviors that oppressed and marginalized people have behind the backs of their oppressors. Now, he's not necessarily talking about, I don't think he's talking about code switching exactly, but it certainly is heavily implied in the theory. Forgive me, because it was like 2011 when I read that book in grad school. So maybe he does talk about code switching. But if I remember correctly, he's talking about like, what happens when you have workers with a really shitty manager, they talk behind their back. They find ways to like slow down work or alter the situation so that they have some semblance of power and control.
Yeah.
And this is absolutely what Percival Everett is doing with James.
Yes.
Is he is showing that there is no doubt in my mind that this kind of stuff actually happened.
Oh, absolutely.
I haven't read any historical evidence for it, but there's no doubt that there were some people who were incredibly brilliant, who were enslaved, who like had to hide that intelligence, because the worst thing for you to do to like endanger yourself when you are sincerely oppressed is to make your oppressor feel inferior.
Absolutely.
That's a surefire way yourself to get yourself abused or killed or punished in some way.
Yeah.
Because these are some of the, to be a slaver, you have to be some of the most insecure sons of bitches around.
Oh, absolutely.
You cannot be a secure person in your personality and being if you are capable of like torturing another human.
The reason the South wanted to secede was because the population of the South was like, you know, 8 or like 10 slaves to every 2 white folk, you know? And if they didn't have legally enforced slavery, they were super sure that they were going to be overwhelmed by free black people and like driven out, you know, maybe lynched themselves, whatever, right? Like they were like always talking about being overrun, which is an interesting way to phrase it. Because
Great replacement.
right?
Yeah. So
yeah.
which is like the modern racist parlance for like the idea that the minorities are coming to replace you.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's
take your stuff.
Take your stuff.
Your beautiful women in houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like this, the big thing that this book just really burns in me, the thing that it just is a reminder of, is how much human potential is wasted to oppressive systems. Like imagine where we would be as a species, just in terms of like technology and development and just incredible human innovation, if we took away all these oppressive structures like slavery and capitalism and all this stuff, and we actually did our best to maximize every's personal
People are always
genius.
talking about how like great like what a great merit-based economy we have, but then we're always like lionizing these fucking like billionaires who had like one good idea maybe one time. We call them geniuses and shit like that. But then but like these fucking geniuses like Elon Musk, they made their money by just driving their workforce super fucking hard, expecting them to work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, sleep at their desks just like he does, because he's got no fucking life, you know? But you're basically just like burning through people like they're fucking, you know, like bricks of coal into a fucking steamship.
That'll eventually blow up.
That will eventually blow up.
Yep. That's what capitalism largely is.
Exactly.
And like Elon Musk's dad has all kinds of like,
oh dude,
he inherited all kinds of money from like shady emerald mining and all kinds of stuff.
Elon Musk's dad moved to South Africa after they set up the apartheid system because he thought that shit was a great idea.
Right.
Elon Musk and his dad are both hella racist, bad people. I fucking hate them. I hope they rot in hell. I just wanted to say that.
Well, and it is really funny that he was like, he did that whole post about how fucking, guess what? Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. Well, guess who else is in the Epstein files?
Yeah. You're there asking when the wildest parties are. What day of the week? What time of the day are your wildest parties?
Begging to get in.
Yeah. Oh my God. What a fucking chode.
Yeah, well, not only that, he is like historically all throughout Twitter and everywhere else, always accused everyone who ever provided any critique of being a pedophile.
Yeah, that's right. The guy that saved that fucking soccer team? Yeah, he accused him of being a pedo.
Yeah.
Because Elon Musk had this super cool idea for a submarine to rescue the kid's soccer team. And then this, like, dude just went and did it instead. Like, he's like, I don't need your fucking stupid submarine, you dumbass. Right. I'm just going to actually take action because I'm a fucking hero. Anyway, code switching.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I think I just, like, I know I say it a lot on this show, but we just fucking need to democratize everything. Get rid of all these terrible hierarchical structures.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can totally get rid of all hierarchy, and maybe there's some elements that are good, but ultimately if you allow hierarchy to...
What was that sound?
That was the sound of the camera, but it still seems to be working. Uh-oh. Hold on. Is it technical? Ooh. That's delayed. Sorry if you guys are watching this. Oh no, it did pause. Oh, camera turned off. Camera battery dead.
You said it ran for 3 hours.
I know! I know! That's okay. Guess what I got?
Backup camera.
Backup camera. Batteries. Damn, okay, well that's a lesson. Those were freshly charged too. Maybe one of the batteries is bad. I'll have to test them all out. Okay. Damn. Well, we were kind of in the middle of points here, so.
Mm.
Okay. Okay. We are still technically streaming.
We're back.
We're back. Sorry, everybody. We had a little. Oh, hold on. Is it?
I think it's because it's delayed. Yeah. No, but the thing about
Sorry, technical camera difficulties. We are back now.
But the thing about the hierarchies, like, I understand what you're saying. I feel like for people to collaborate, you do need some kind of structure that orients people around like shared goals. And sometimes, I don't know how I feel about anarchy. Sometimes I feel like it might be the solution, and sometimes I feel like
I think as much as I love the idea, I think it's too optimistic.
I think it's too optimistic. It's almost utopian, and it's like naivete that people would actually be able to collaborate without some, I don't know, like soft or implied authority. I don't know how you establish that. People always think that like meritocracy is the way to go. Like meritocracy would be a good thing.
But meritocracy doesn't actually exist.
Meritocracy doesn't exist, and meritocracy would be a bad well, I mean, meritocracy does exist. It's just a bad thing.
But
if merit is the only thing that matters, then people who don't have perceived merit then don't matter, and that is bad.
Yeah, and I think that's
because that denies people's innate humanity,
right,
which is good.
I think whatever possible system you create, it has to be based on dignity.
Mm-hmm.
Because doesn't matter how intelligent or talented someone is, they deserve to be treated like a human.
Yeah.
And they might not be, they may be dumb as a box of rocks. They could even be illiterate, whatever. They still have inherent worth.
They could be corrupt and evil, man, like fucking Gollum, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Gollum sucked. I hate Gollum. But it was important for him to be there.
Right.
At the end.
So everybody's inherent worth and humanity needs to be recognized. That is why, like, in theory of law, you have rule of law, because not rule of, like, influence or power or money, even though that's ends up being what it is.
It almost always, yeah.
Right. I mean, we're literally seeing that in real time right now with the Epstein files, that, like, it does not matter. Like, there's clearly no rule of law.
Yeah.
Because if there was, then hundreds of people right now, maybe thousands, I don't know how bad it is in those files because I haven't looked into them, but like
it's kind of overwhelming.
It's overwhelming, right? But let's assume it's several hundred people who are very clearly have committed crimes. They should all have now been arrested.
But they haven't. No one's been arrested.
Right. So no one has been arrested for this. Some people's reputations have been ruined, but if you notice, where have they been ruined? They've been ruined mostly in Europe.
Yeah.
In the United States,
yeah,
it's very clear that rule of law maybe never really existed at all.
I know,
that
man.
It was only in like maybe some middle class circumstances you had some degree of rule of law.
Yeah.
But if you're poor, you don't get access to your legal rights because you can't afford a good lawyer.
And if you're
rich, you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Apparently.
Like literally terrible, terrible things.
It's quite apparent that you can do whatever you want.
That's never been more clear in history than I think it has right now in American history.
Yeah, like you can lose your job for saying that the president, for making fun of the president on national television every night, but you can't go to jail for doing. I mean, I've lost track of the crimes that our president has done. They are so numerous that I can't even recall all of them. He's like done breach of contract since the 1980s. He's done rapes of people in America not connected to Jeffrey Epstein. He's done so many rapes connected to Jeffrey Epstein. He's been tried for crimes and found guilty and still reelected to the presidency.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make any sense to me, and I think that's kind of the point.
It makes me ill.
Yeah,
It makes me ill.
but
because
what we're saying is that, like, if you've got the money and you've got the authority, nothing can touch you now.
And I think the other side of dignity is that everyone should be given dignity.
Yeah.
And everyone should be held accountable.
Yeah.
For their actions.
Sure. Absolutely.
It has to, if in order to have a dignity for everyone, then there must be justice for everyone too. You can't have those as two separate things.
Yeah. Two unconnected
and I think James is such a conversation about that. And I think, like, the fact that this book came out in 2024, when all of this crazy shit was happening, and we see the lead up to the 2024 election, I think is, like, just a sign of, like, how important it is to remember how terrible these systems are. And I mean, like, we're not to the level of horror of slavery at this moment, but, like, we are certainly, like, headed on that track.
I feel like we're in 1680 right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we're starting. I mean,
we're having a conversation about, like, who can we enslave and who can't we enslave? Who, by which I mean, who can we put in prison and who can't we put in prison?
But because we do have slavery. Because you have these people that are putting in for-profit prisons that they're not paid to work.
Yeah.
And they're undocumented, and they're literally put into a prison for being undocumented and then forced to do work.
Yeah, you can enslave any person that ICE wants to round up because they're brown. You know, they don't even have to. They could be born and raised in the United States, but if they're brown, if they speak Spanish or something like that, you know, then yeah, you can send them wherever. But if they're a rich white man who has, you know, like a net worth of, like, let's say, like, basically 40 or 50 million to, like, some billions, you know, you can't touch that motherfucker. He can literally go down on Fifth Avenue and shoot someone live on TV, and you can't do anything about it.
And he literally said that.
I'm quoting him.
I mean, like,
I'm quoting him right now.
Right, exactly. So he knows.
Yeah.
He knows he could do it.
He said that shit in 2016, and he made it happen.
Right. It's just, oh, man. And another thing about this book that I really appreciated is, like, he really takes the time to make you understand how fucking awful slavery was.
Like, God.
Like,
absolutely.
I mean, people do not frequently talk about the sexual violence of slavery. It's when you think of slavery,
it's not the first thing that comes to mind.
No,
but it will from now on be the first thing that comes to mind when I think of slavery.
Yeah, I mean, it's just basically, and like, I mean, obviously it happened to women, but there's no doubt it happened to men too.
Oh yeah, of course.
Like, it is just,
it happens in prison all the time. We make jokes about it all the time. It's fucking messed up too.
Yeah, it's not a funny joke.
No, it's not.
Like, and it doesn't even matter, like, what that person has done.
No.
Like, making someone a victim of sexual violence is never a good thing.
No.
Like, it's one of the most horrible and dehumanizing thing. I myself have been a victim of sexual violence, and, like, it is life-altering and life-changing.
Yeah.
And it is just, like, to think about, like, literally owning someone as property means you get to do whatever the fuck you want to them.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to think of it in terms of, like, there are going to be people who are going to do every worst possible thing, like rape, torture, everything you can conceive of.
That's so true. It's like oh man, Kathy Bates has played this role a couple of different times, but, like, I often think of, like, her character in Misery as, like, a shadow version of her character in American Horror Story, the 3rd season.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, dude. It's like the only good season of... Hot take. That's the only good season of that show. And it still has problems.
Is it because it's Kathy Bates?
Well, it's because it's Kathy Bates and Angela Bassett, and, like, it's like an all-star.
Okay.
But it's, like, also just the best season because it's about women.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And another hot take: stories with many in them, kind of suck usually. James is an exception. To be honest,
There's always exceptions.
Women are better. I'm saying it.
Most of my main characters in my books are all women.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. There's a reason that The Legend of Korra is also the superior superior story of the Avatar. I'm saying that too. Another hot take.
I mean, I actually agree with that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who are fighting words.
Yeah, but no, in both of those stories, in Misery and in American Horror Story, she has someone at her total mercy, and she does every worst thing that she can to those people, you know? I mean, she takes it far, it's taken farther in American Horror Story because, you know, she was literally a slaveholder, you know, and she had like a chamber of horrors, but like, yeah, the version of her, like that character in Misery, I forget her name now, and I feel bad about it. So it's a great story.
Annie,
yeah.
Because they did a season of Castle Rock on her which was not good. Yeah, you know.
How is Castle Rock?
The first season is really interesting and strange if you like obscure and strange and experimental stories. The second season was just about Annie Wilkes, I think.
Okay. Yeah, Annie Wilkes is
it's her backstory of how she kind of goes insane.
Man, I don't fucking need that shit.
There's no reason to.
There's no reason
for it. It was
like the character's already interesting. It's like the story about like Norma Bates' mom. They made a whole show out of that.
Bates Motel.
Like, yeah, it's
you
like,
need it.
Man, you
it's
guys
a money
are
grab.
fucking, yeah, like trauma porn. But in Misery, she does this thing where she she vacillates personality, you know, where she can perform humanity, but then like once that's not necessary anymore, or once like she's not in the mood to do that anymore, she gets so fucking scary because she's got this person at her fucking not beck and call, but she's at her mercy, you know, and that's what like slaveholders. Judge Thatcher in Huckleberry Finn and in James seems like a good one, if you want to put it that way. But if it's not convenient for him to be a jovial, nice, wise, patriarchal guy, he won't do it, you know?
Yeah.
He'll be mean, and he'll, you know, as James says in the book, you might have whipped me less hard than the overseer, but you still whipped me.
Yeah, and I think that the James book really effectively shows you that there is no such thing as a good slave owner. Yeah. There is no
Huckleberry Finn implies it too, because like Judge Thatcher is supposed to be a nice guy who looks out for Huck Finn, but he also enslaves his best friend Jim.
Yeah.
And it's gonna sell him.
Right. I think Twain deals a lot more in subtext, and Everett deals much more in your face, you're going to eat this terrible, terrible meal because we all need to have a conversation about how fucking awful slavery is.
It's a weird thing to hear you say that, because I actually really enjoyed this book a lot. I thought it was really engaging. It was really funny. It was super well written. But it's like,
but it's not subtle.
It's the real shit.
It's the real shit.
Yeah.
It is. And I think that's what makes it such a good, like, if the purpose of literature is to be in conversation with other literature,
which it is. That's what it is. Yeah.
This exemplifies that.
You're right. It's a perfect fucking example of it.
Yeah. Now, there was one thing I wanted to
with a beauty mark.
With
a beauty mark to make everything else more beautiful. The beauty mark is that it's set in 1861 instead of 1835.
I wanted to make a gripe actually about Huck Finn and not James.
Oh, my bad.
My Huck Finn gripe is I fucking hate Tom Sawyer at the end of the book. I hate him. I hate him.
I think Tom Sawyer is I think it's actually perfect, because at the beginning of the book, okay, so when you're introduced to both Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn,
before you say, can I say why I hate him?
Yeah.
I better say why.
Yeah.
So I hate Tom Sawyer at the end of Huck Finn because Tom Sawyer has the knowledge. The moment you find him again, moment Huck runs into him and pretends to be Tom Sawyer, and they do this whole little swap game.
So great.
That was really clever. But then he's like, we've got to get Jim out. And Tom Sawyer at this point already knows that Jim has been declared free by the widow.
Yes.
Okay, so Tom Sawyer does this and then proceeds for the next several weeks to fuck around with someone's humanity,
Yeah.
and and Jim barely escapes with his life.
Yes.
And it just infuriated me. But you had a different take on this.
Yes. So I think that the reason that Twain has has this bit of the storyline happen, the reason he writes it this way is because, so when we meet Tom and Huck, Tom is like the more privileged, like, rascal in town, and Huck is like kind of the outcast, like the bad boy, like the Sean from Boy Meets World, Sean Hunter of the story.
God, I forgot about that show.
You ever forget about Sean Hunter and his floppy hair? It's a bi-awakening moment for me. But no, so they're similar in their like maturity levels and like their aspirations, which is mostly to like play hooky from school and go fishing and get into adventures and shit like that. But then like Tom and Huck get into a real adventure, and like they kind of like branch after that. After the cave adventure, like Tom basically just lives his same life in town, getting into little scrapes and like having misadventures.
He's still playing pirate games.
He's still playing pirate games and yeah, exactly. And then Huck goes and has like a real fucking adventure, like an odyssey, and he like experiences all this stuff. And when he comes back to town, he's like a man now, and he's got. His best friend isn't Tom Sawyer anymore, it's Jim. Because they went through some shit together. He's like, I gotta free my buddy Jim. But Tom's like, oh yeah, we're doing another game. We're doing a goof about, and I want this to go on because it's so fun. But like there's real stakes, and Huck gets to there's real stakes, and he gets mad at Tom about it. But like, I think it really exemplifies Huck's growth. But I think your frustration with that is what he was going for. Because you're like, this isn't fucking games, man. This is this dude's freedom. He's free, and you don't tell him, like, that's fucked up. Because it is. It's really fucked up. And that's like, I mean, if you're a white person in like New England or anywhere in America in 1880, this might have been like an illuminating text for you. You might have been like, oh yeah, I thought this was a kid's story, but this actually hits, that guy is free and he should know that, because that was uncommon back then, and there was backsliding happening.
Yeah.
Art, man.
Yeah. No, I like, when you put it that way, it makes me understand what Twain was trying to show, because it is ultimately about a coming of age story.
Yeah.
But it still fucking pisses me off.
Well, it's supposed to. That's what I'm saying. It's supposed to piss you off.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, yeah, you're trying to evoke like your sense of justice here.
Yeah.
And and Twain is like, yeah.
He was an anti-racist in the fucking 1880s,
right,
dude.
Which is
notable.
Yeah, very notable. Yeah. So, final thoughts.
Final thoughts, James. Fucking great book, man.
You gotta
get it, read it. It's so good.
Read it with Huck.
And read Huck Finn first, because it's such a good pairing. I read Huck Finn like last year, for like the third time, and it's like still great. You can read it in different formats. The last time I read it, it was in a manga adaptation of it. It was so good. It was so fun. But I've read it. I've done the regular text. I've done an audiobook back when Audible was first a thing, and manga, and they're all fantastic. And James, the
James makes it better.
James made it better.
James made it better.
I feel like I've read it 4 times now, and they're all great.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's it for this episode. We are going to be reading Kurt Vonnegut's book, Mother Night, next time, which is about a guy who is...
It's about the dangers of being a spy.
That's right, yeah. So he's a spy, but he also happens to be one of the most famous Nazi propagandists, but he's literally passing vital information for the Allies, and there's only happens to be 2 people who know that he's a spy. One of them was the president, and the other one has just died. And so the story is told, I
Great.
think, from a prison. He's in prison somewhere for being caught.
Probably.
And it's been a while since I've read it. So yeah, if you love Vonnegut stuff and you like stories about power and resistance, join us next time.
Yes. Bye, guys.
Bye. Okay. Damn, that stinking camera.
How long were we going for?